Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
Welcome back to Union Junction. You have reached episode 2 of our dedicated Blue Jackets podcast. And unlike last week, you see we got a bunch of people here. This week, our co-hosts are here. We have Cody Chalfan and Nicholas Arnold, our Blue Jackets writers. Welcome, boys.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yep, thanks for having us.
Well, you're here every week with me, which is awesome. And even awesomer, we're going to have a guest for you this week. Our first guest since we've rebranded from THW Live, and he joined us then, and he's taken some time to join us now, and we very much appreciate it. It's our buddy Dave Maetzold from Bally Sports, Ohio. Hi, Dave.
Scheig, let's go. When's the puck drop? Let's go.
When's the puck? What? We're 2 weeks away now, right?
I know. It's crazy, right?
Where did this summer go?
What are we looking at? We're looking at camp in 2 weeks and then 14th. Jeez, not far
13
away.
days until media day already.
Yeah.
Less than 2 weeks. That's going to be crazy. And I can't believe it. I mean, we're at the end of July. That's when free agency happened. Had pretty much more or less 1 month of summer, and here we are getting ready for a full season. So, like you said, let's get this show on the road. So, with that said, we got camp coming up here in a couple of weeks. Dave, what are the biggest storylines that you're going to be looking at once they get going here?
Well, I mean, it really goes from goaltender right on out, right? Like, we could spend a half an hour talking about Corpy versus Elvis. We could spend all kinds of time talking about the fact that those two guys have to split time again. We could jump up to the blue line and say, okay, Jake Bean, Adam Boquist, who's going to replace Seth Jones? The answer to that is nobody, but somebody has to fill the role. Somebody has to eat some of those minutes. And staying on the blue line, you got Zach Werenski there, big fat contract, now steps up where he is the man. I mean, you could stay on the blue line for an hour, right? Then you jump up to let's just go bottom six. Let's not even talk about top six. Let's go bottom six. You got Gregory Hoffman. You got Chainikov. You got Sean Corrali. Where's he going to fit into this thing? And those are really intriguing topics for me to talk about. Then you go to the top six. Who's going to be your starting set or your first line centerman? Who's going to make sure that Patrik Laine is happy this year and is able to play the type of game that he wants to play? Is it Jake Voracek? Does the acquisition of Jake Voracek really improve things over what Cam Atkinson was able to do? So many intriguing storylines, guys. So many different things to look at from the goaltender on out. Oh, and I haven't even gone behind the bench yet where Brad Larsen gets his first shot in the NHL. So you tell me, you guys are the writers. What are you going to write about? Because there's something on each spot of the ice, right? Every place, every position, including the head coach. It's an intriguing storyline for me.
We will never be bored, Dave. That much is for sure. We could every day, 3 times a day, we could have a different topic.
You could.
Crazy stuff. Go ahead, Cody.
Who do you think has the most to prove for Columbus heading into training camp this season?
Most improved?
Oh, most to prove.
Oh, the most to prove. Boy, I would say, again, sticking kind of with the same theme there, I would say it's got to be either Elvis, who wants to prove that he is a starting goaltender in the National Hockey League and that he deserves a lion's share of the games, or it's Zach Werenski, who wants to prove that he can be Zach Werenski without his familiar partner over to his right. I mean, let's be honest. It's been Zach and Seth forever, and now it's just Zach. Or you want to go up front? To me, it's Patrik Laine. Patrik Laine came in with a lot of fanfare last year and really didn't deliver on the fanfare. So they go out and they get a playmaker. His name's Jake Voracek. We all know what he can do. Patrik Laine, here's your guy. Here's your setup guy. Here's the guy who on the power play is going to set you up for that one-timer more than we ever saw last year. Here's the guy who's going to set you up for some more great goals like we saw on occasion last year. So again, I go position by position. Elvis, Zach, Patrick Laine.
And Nicholas.
Dave, just like you said, there's so many X factors heading into this season. You've listed a ton, but for me, the one that I'm kind of most interested in seeing is how Lars does behind the bench. Based on what you've seen, because you've had a closer look at him than a lot of us have over the last few years, what kind of coaching style do you expect that he'll bring? And do you think that he can get the most out of, those guys that maybe didn't perform up to spec last year?
Well, let's address it right from the start. I mean, there were a lot of coaches who were available last year, a lot of people that they thought might come in and be the next head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Bruce Boudreau was out there. Turk was out there. Gerard Gallant was out there. I mean, there were a lot of coaches that people thought, okay, let's bring this guy in. And let's be honest, when Brad Larsen was announced, there were a lot of fans were like, really? We're going to go with Lars? Here's why I think it's the right move. This guy will not be a huge departure off of what John Tortorella did over the last several seasons. And he has learned about playing that style of hockey under John Tortorella, which I think is a solid way to win in the National Hockey League. But Brad Larsen also knows that there are some guys who are just waiting to be let out of their cages, so to speak. Let us play some offensive hockey. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that out of a Brad Larsen coach team. The other thing that I really like about Brad Larsen, and this is personal stuff that I learned from having interviewed him during games, in between periods, Brad Larsen never gets too high, never gets too low. If you were to go back and review all of the interviews that I did with him over the course of my time with him doing in-game interviews, you would never really know if the team was up 6-2 or down 7-1. And I think that even keel is really going to help this young team. I think the fact that he's got familiarity with a lot of these young players is really going to help this team. I'm really anxious to see how he does. I'm anxious to see how he handles adversity, and I'm equally anxious to see what Brad Larsen's like after this team wins 3 or 4 games in a row. Because I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference. I don't think you'll see a really cocky Brad Larsen, but I also don't think you're going to see a guy who beats his team up if they lose 3 or 4 games in a row. And I think that will be a benefit to this hockey team. I think that's why they went with him, to be honest with you. I think he's learned under Torts. He's learned how to be an NHL head coach under Torts. He plays great reverence to Torts. And I think that he will show both what he learned there and also his own coaching personality as this season unfolds.
Dave Maetzold from Bally Sports Ohio joining us here on the Union Junction podcast. I'm your host, Mark Scheig, and Nicholas Arnold and Cody Chalfan joining us as well. Metz, you got to ask you about Chinakhov. In my mind, he's the guy. He's kind of comes in from overseas. He was the surprise first-round pick last year, where that had some experts even scrambling who the heck this guy was. He's over here in North America now. Is Chinakhov mania going to be a thing? Like, what are we expecting here? And does he have a real shot of making the Blue Jackets right off the bat?
Oh, I absolutely think that he does. And we're going to learn a lot about him in Traverse City, obviously. He's going to get a chance with the prospects in Traverse City. But if you look at the way he finished his season, the ability to score goals in bunches, the fact that he's come over now to North America to get himself accustomed to things a little bit more over here, and the fact that he'll have the opportunity in Traverse, he'll have the opportunity in training camp. Look, it's a first-round pick, guys, and he might get more opportunity than maybe a guy like a Gregory Hoffman. Who knows? But he's going to get a chance to showcase what he can do, and I think we're going to be surprised. Listen, what was Yarmo's biggest surprise pick of all time? Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? That was the biggest one. I think we can all agree on that. Like, whoa, what? He's going with Dubois here, and Dubois panned out into being a pretty good NHL caliber top 6 centerman, right? So didn't turn out well for the Blue Jackets, but if you look at the way Yarmo handled that situation, he saw talent, he identified talent, and he was right. I think we're going to see the same thing with Chinakhov. I really do. I think Yarmo knew what he was going after. He delivered on it late in his last season over there in Russia. So I think that he'll deliver on it here. We'll know, I think, very early on in the way things play out here.
Hi, Cody.
Kind of sticking on the topic of young players, the Blue Jackets have tons of young prospects. Which one of those prospects do you think is going to leave the biggest mark during training camp?
Has there been a more repetitive question over the last 4 or 5 years? I mean, hey, it's going to be Jacob Lulia. Yeah. Oh. Emil Bemster. Yeah. Alexander Tex. Waiting. We're waiting for one of these guys to step up, right?
Yep.
I'm going to put my money on Alexander Texier. And now, can we even call him a prospect anymore? Can we legitimately call? But he's still young. He's been hurt. He's gone through some ups and downs. We're waiting on one of these guys. And I'm going to put Texier and Emil Bemstrom in the same category. Please, God, one of these guys step up and show us the potential that Jarmo promised us we'd see. Remember, if you go back 3 seasons ago, when he would talk about players who are untouchable. I've got these prospects in my system and people ask, and they're untouchable. Show us why they're untouchable, right? I mean, I want to see why Emil Bemstrom was untouchable. And I guess those are the 2 guys that I'm looking at the most. And I don't really even know if you could call them prospects at this point. But those are the guys that I'm going to look at. Foudy, because of his speed, you have to throw him in there as well. He's got to think he's got a real shot at making this team. I was with the guys with the AAA Jackets yesterday at their golf outing with Roslovic, obviously, and with Sean Corrali, obviously, and the Sherwood brothers were there. Obviously, they're not part of the team anymore. But another name that came up was Carson Meyer. Carson Meyer is a guy who's been through some ups and downs at the collegiate level, but if you look at what he did last year in Cleveland, had a pretty good finish to his season. Is that a guy who, as a legitimate prospect, says, okay, this year I'm making this team? Hometown kid, maybe that's a guy. But I'll go right back to where I started. Texier, Bemstrom, please, God, somebody, show me you can be a top 6 forward, please.
Anybody. Good, Nicholas.
Dave, you mentioned a bit about Patrick Laine and how we're waiting to see if Voracek can kind of ignite what he's got over there. Another guy who kind of didn't perform as we expected he would when in the last season was Max Domi. Do you think that Domi is still like the impact player that he was when he was in Montreal? Did you see any glimpses of that at all last year?
Yeah, and I think he's got something to prove too. I mean, he's going to come off the surgery now, the shoulder surgery. Don't hold me to this because this is just hearsay that you hear in the summer, but I've heard that he is ahead of schedule, and it may be before November, before he joins this team, which would be awesome news. I really am anxious to see what Max Domi can do. He finished with a bit of a flourish as well. But, I mean, you throw a healthy Max Domi in there, and you throw a healthy Gus Nyquist in there, who's also coming off shoulder surgery, who didn't play at all last year. And you start talking about guys who can make a difference, right? Certainly leadership in the room, depth in the room, but also some goal-scoring capability, which we all know has been something that Columbus has been looking for a long, long time. So, I mean, I saw Max briefly during the summer, super positive, really pumped to get going. If he can bring that attitude to his style of play, I think that he could really be an impact player. I really do. And then you start talking about a group of forwards guys, like you throw Chinnikov, you throw Hoffman in there, you throw Domi in there, you throw Nyquist in there, a group of guys who have been a part of the organization. Foudy, throw him in there as well, but not really given a chance in the last couple of years because of injury or whatever the case may be to really showcase. You know, that's where you start talking about this team going from maybe being a question mark to not so much of a question mark. And I think that's going to be the fun of camp, to be honest with you. I think that's going to be fun to see where these guys fit, how healthy they are, and what kind of attitude they bring into camp.
Dave, got a 2-part question for you, kind of segue into it perfectly for us. And you got to love the experts. Year in and year out, the prognosticators are always out saying Columbus Blue Jackets, you know, they look at the center depth, they might not compare to some other teams. So I've already seen some projections where they're going to finish in last and then last by a lot. So give everybody a little bit of hope for this season. And then the second part, what would actually make a successful season for this team, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, part of that too, Scheiger, I think, is you have to admit that the Metro is going to be loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if you saw what that team in Carolina did last week, but I mean, my God. I mean, they're going to be loaded. I just saw today that Crosby looks like he might be out for the beginning of the season, so that'll impact what's going on in Pittsburgh. But the Metro, again, is loaded. So part of what the Blue Jackets are facing is a really, really tough division. But people ask me all the time throughout the course of the summer, what's the season going to be like? And if you would have asked me in May, I would have said, I don't know. I mean, that's this, the Seth Jones news was breaking. We didn't know about Cam at that point. Foligno, we all thought Foligno was coming back. He's not coming back. Obviously, he's going to be in Boston. And it looked dire, right? But then things start to happen a little bit. They make the move to get Kuraly, which I thought was a huge move. They signed Zach to the long-term deal, and Zach comes out, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, but when Werenski had his press availability via Zoom, you could feel the vibe from him, right? You could feel I want to be in Columbus. Why would anybody ask me about going to Detroit? I didn't even think about it. And I think when he said that, and when he acknowledged that, yeah, Seth's gone, I'm kind of the guy now. I mean, I got a little bit more juices going, to be honest with you. And I hope fans did too, because I think that took the situation from, oh man, this is going to be a long couple of years to, wait a minute, maybe they're going to be all right. And again, going back to some of the things that I talked about before, I think Boquist is going to be a guy that's going to surprise people, because I think he's going to play on the power play, and he might be the perfect complement to Zach Werenski. I think Sean Kuraly is going to give them some center depth and some passion for this team that we're not used to seeing. And I think Jake Voracek, what is he, 33? How old is Jake Voracek, Scheiger? About early 30s, right?
Early 30s, yeah. 33, right? I believe.
So this is a guy who's going to come in. He's not going to be known as a goal scorer, but he's going to be a playmaker.
Yep.
What were we missing when Panarin left? Playmaker.
Yep.
Playmaker with Line A. Hey, maybe you have something here. The other question mark, guys, was they're going to trade a goaltender. It's going to be one or the other. And because of the god-awful, horrific tragedy with Matisse Kivlenieks, God rest his soul, they're gonna go with Elvis and Corpy. Okay, that's a pretty solid goaltending tandem. You could argue that's two starting goaltenders in the National Hockey League. So I'm a little more optimistic than I was in early summer, late spring, and I think fans should be too. They love Jake Bean, guys. They love him. Yarmo wanted him early, and now here he is to solidify that decor. And there are going to be other opportunities for guys to step up and be a part of that decor. Andrew Peeke. I mean, how steamed do you think Andrew Peeke was at the end of last year when he wasn't playing? He wasn't playing.
Yep.
You don't think he's got a huge chip on his shoulder and he wants to come into this season and make a difference on the blue line? Of course he does. Smooth skating guy, good sized guy who could make a difference. So, I mean, I might be sounding like the ultimate homer going into the training camp and, I think they're going to be okay. I'm not telling you they're going to win the Metro. I'm not even telling you they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be a better hockey team than we thought they were going to be when the summer began. Let's put it that way. How about that?
I 100% agree with that. I think Cody and Nicholas, I think, pretty much on board with maybe they're being a little underrated, but I don't expect them to win a division. But yeah, I think that's spot on, because look at the wingers. So you think about all the attention is on the lack of center depth. And then you've got, like you mentioned, Line, Voracek, Nyquist, Bjorkstrand, and we haven't talked about, Chinakhov and Hoffman. It's a pretty good set of wingers there who can score the puck. And if you get Voracek to come in and be that playmaker that he is, I think some teams might look at Columbus and maybe overlook them a little bit, and Columbus will come back and bite them. So it seems like.
Yeah.
Follow up.
100% agree with you. Go ahead.
Oh, I would say follow up for you on that. about Werenski. Is that narrative about players not wanting to be there dead now that Werenski signed? Is that the official end of it, or is it still going to creep up every once in a while?
No, I think it's still going to creep up because it was one after another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing that was, for me, was crushing about Seth was after Bob, after Brad, after Duchesne, I don't put Nick in the same category because Nick was a free agent. I don't put Savvy in the same category, but fans will say, well, all these guys left anyway. But I don't put them in that category. I think the narrative will still exist until this team can win with some talent and not lose a guy that's helped the team get over whatever hump comes next. In other words, let's say this team makes the playoffs this year and they're good. And let's say they win a round. And then all of a sudden Line goes, that's great. See ya. I'm out. I mean, they don't need that. They need Patrick Line to say, okay, yeah, work with Voracek. I like it here. I'm going to stay here. And I think they need that with the guys they're drafting as first round talent as well, right? I mean, we won't know yet for a while what it's going to be like with Johnson and guys like that. Although Sillinger's an interesting story. I mean, you talk about prospects that might make an impact. People thought, okay, we won't see him for 2 or 3 years. Hang on a minute, maybe we will. Those guys, that group of guys has to stick around and win for that narrative to change. And you know me, Scheiger, I want that narrative to change as much as anybody because it sickens me.
Amen.
I mean, seeing Seth Jones say what he said, I'll tell you guys, I tweeted something that I probably shouldn't have tweeted, but I was like, you got to be kidding me, Seth. You got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're leaving? I mean, here's a guy who had, here, take this, put this on your sweater. I guess we'll go on this side. Whatever. Here you go, Seth. Here's a boatload of cash. Wait, you're leaving? You're leaving? I mean, that one was crushing. So they got to overcome that, and they got to win with this next group of guys. And I think that'll help crush that narrative a little bit.
Nicholas, did you happen? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I ask you about the decor for a second? Just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Pretty much the identity of Columbus's decor has been shut down guys like Savard. If you go even further back, guys like Tootin. These guys are strong defensive shutdown guys, and that's what they've been kind of built around. Now we're seeing Adam Boquist, Jake Bean, Zach Werenski as kind of, the cornerstones of this decor moving forwards. Do you think this is at all a shift in Columbus's identity as more of a defense-first squad?
It'll be interesting because Brad Larsen will have a lot to say about that, right? I mean, let's be honest. The defensive mindset of this team came from John Tortorella. That's the way he coaches hockey. That's his mindset, and not just on the blue line, but he expects his forwards to come back and play a 200-foot game as well and back check and do all the things that are required of them. So it will be interesting to see if there's any type of shift at all between John Tortorella and his coaching philosophy and Brad Larsen. We already talked about it a little bit with regard to Patrick Laine and how it may uncage him a little bit and allow him to skate a little bit freer. But back on the blue line, there's one key name that you left out of there, and that's Vladislav Gavrikov.
Yeah.
Vladdy, who I love, is a shutdown guy. You can't, I'm not sure he's the same type of defenseman as David Savard, but he's going to be one of your shutdown guys back there, right? But you're right. Everybody else back there, Bean, Boquist, Zach Werenski, certainly, even Dean Kukin shows some offensive flair every once in a while. Andrew Peak absolutely has some offensive flair back there. Really, the only guy who might figure in the mix who doesn't have that is Scott Harrington, and won't it be interesting to see where he fits in all of this as well. But I think that change of philosophy will be more in the way Larsen directs this team as opposed to the personnel that's back there, right? And I gotta believe, who was more defensive minded than Torts? Really, maybe Barry Trotz. Think of another coach who emphasizes it as much as Torts did. Trotz is the first name that comes to mind. I'm sure there are more,
Mhm.
but it'll be interesting to see how Lars carries that forward or maybe adjusts it a little bit to his own personal coaching philosophy.
And sorry, just to follow up on that, kind of a follow up on the identity of the team. For your money, who would you say is sporting the C next in Columbus?
Let's see. I'm super partial to Boone, and I can't believe how many minutes are we into this thing, and that's the first time I've mentioned Boone Jenner. My apologies, Booner. If you're watching this thing, my apologies.
Mhm.
I'm super partial to Boone only because of the way he plays. And you talk about identity. That's a guy who is the identity of the Columbus Blue Jackets for the last 6 or 7 years, just hard-nosed every shift. He's not Connor McDavid out there with his speed or skill, but he plays hard every shift, and he gives it everything every shift. I would love to see Booner be elevated and switch out that A to a C. I think Zach has certainly earned it. I think by virtue of the fact that not only what he's done here, I think Zach's willingness to sign a long-term deal shows that, okay, yeah, I'll be the guy. Sure, I can be a leader in this town. Put that thing on my sweater and I'll show you the way. I think that speaks volumes for where he is in his career right now. And there's another school of thought that says, they're going to go back to the post-Nash era and there's not going to be one. Maybe. I don't know. But I would be fine with either Booner or Zach wearing that C for sure.
Just a couple minutes left here. We always go out to Twitter, ever since we rebranded, and we do two things. We ask fans our question of the week, and then we ask fans to ask us anything. Okay. And for Ask Us Anything is actually a hockey-related question. I think it's a really good question. And Dave, I'll present it to you and then let Cody and Nicholas answer as well. What will the easiest thing for CBJ be this season? Or in other words, what thing for them will be the best? What's their strength, in other words, Dave?
I got to believe it's goaltending, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Don't get mad at me if I mention Aaron Portzline in The Athletic, but he talked to Elvis a couple days ago, and Elvis said, first of all, how do you not love Elvis Presley? Right? I mean, how do you not love the guy? But he said, with all that happened over the summer, with the passing of Matisse, he is going to try to have a Vezina Trophy type season. That's what he wants. Yep. And I think if you look at, it's not easy. I don't think any of it is easy, but I think goaltending is going to be a strength, especially when you have a guy like Elvis Merzlikins, who's got great talent, saying things like, I want to be the guy. I want to win a Vezina Trophy. Wow, is he motivated? Now, his counterpart and his good friend, Jonas Korpisalo, is going to have something to say about that. So how competitive is it going to be between the pipes, right? I mean, you can only imagine how they're friends. They like each other. They support each other. But with both of them wanting to be the guy back there, I think goaltending will really be a strength, especially as they try to figure out, some of the things that we've talked about, the defensive philosophy, Zach now being the guy who's going to be the guy and probably the minute eater back there on the blue line. I think goaltending will have to be and likely should be the strength of this team as they enter this season.
Cody, what do you say to that question? Biggest strength?
Well, I originally was thinking goaltending. We have two very experienced goaltenders, but just for the sake of being different, I'm going to say their offense. I cannot believe I'm saying this about a Blue Jackets team. This is not a hot take. This is a belief I really do have. I mean, we saw glimpses of the offensive creativity from Line A with his full ice goal. We had Jack Roslovic, was it against Carolina, where he split two defenders and went between the legs? And then even Texier's shootout goal. Like, the offensive creativity is there, and we have speed from players like Robinson. Or let me try to not be biased here. They have speed from players like Robinson and Foodie, who can really get to the goal fast, and I think that's going to be an advantage. I think instead of losing games 2-1 or 1-0, they'll lose games by a margin of like 5-4 or 4-3 instead.
Don't tell Elvis that, man. That's going to just make Elvis mad.
Great. What do you say, Nicholas?
I'm going to follow Cody and say that Dave took the top answer. So, Dave, you're killing us here, making us actually work here. Come on, what are you doing?
Sorry.
I'm going to come up with a little bit more of a creative answer. I'm going to say that, they're a younger team in a lot of spots, and they've got nothing to lose in this season. So I'm going to say that their energy level is going to be pretty easy for them in terms of, like in a day in, day out basis, they're going to give it all they've got, I think, especially with a new coach, a new coaching staff that's young as well. They're going to be pushing hard to prove themselves in the league. A lot of these other guys are going to be pushing to prove themselves in the league. So I think that at the end of the day, they're not going to have any problems getting motivated to get out there and start trying stuff, even if they're losing. I think that they're going to take each loss as a learning experience. It seems to be the type of guy that Lars is. And, they're aware of where they are. So hopefully they can use that to their advantage.
So, Nicholas, let me jump on that real quick, because it reminded me of something that a former player told me. Remember when Rennie Bork ran into Torts at the outdoor rink, and Torts missed like 5 or 6 games, and they won, I don't know, they won like 3 or 4 of them, right? And I asked this former player, I'm like, what's going on, man? You guys just caught fire. And the former player said back to me, Torts isn't around. We're all playing free and easy. And I'm like, wow, okay. That was a pretty telling statement. I have thought of that recently because obviously Torts has moved on. He did a wonderful job with this team, but he was a very demanding coach. What will it be like for players who played under Torts to now play under a different system? Will we see some of exactly what you're talking about? A little bit more of a free skating, a little bit more of a freestyle style of hockey. It's really going to be interesting to look for as this season unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely right. I agree with everything you guys are saying. If I were to answer that question, I think it's Patrick Laine, because I think he's due for a huge rebound. I mean, if there's anybody on the team that can pot a goal from anywhere in the zone, it's him. And if you can get him the puck, I mean, I know he doesn't have the talent like you did around in Winnipeg, but to get back to 30 goals, maybe play free and easier, have, Voracek around him. If that works out that way, that might be the best thing for him right now. Is the defense is a little bit of a work in progress, trying to get that chemistry. Dave mentioned the goaltending. I'm still curious to know if both of them finish the season with the Blue Jackets. Is this going to be a trade deadline situation? Are they still even looking to try and trade one of them? I personally don't think so, but if Edmonton's not happy with Mike Smith, why not call the Blue Jackets?
And Mark, it's Laine's contract year.
Yep.
So there's got to be a bit more of an incentive there to see, because his next contract is really going to set the tone if he does decide to go UFA, down the line. If it goes up next year from where he's at, then that's going to really help him. And if it goes down from, that 7.5 that he's at right now, that's going to affect him long-term too.
Yeah.
100%.
That's going to be a huge part of it. There's no question about it.
No question. And we'll end the show like this, guys. The question of the week we posed out on Twitter was, what prospect are you most excited about? And I'm just going to quickly read 1 or 2 of these and then get your thoughts on it here. The obvious answers here, I see a bunch of Chinnikov. I see a bunch of Kent Johnson. I can't wait to see how Chinnikov's game translates in North America. If he can jump into a top 9 role right away, maybe his shot can also help the power play. It could help make CBJ be a competitive team this season. And then we got Jason Scope that says a lot of hype around Cole Sillinger. It actually wouldn't surprise me how close he is to the NHL. So I take it to you guys. Nicholas, we'll start with you. What's the prospect that you're most excited about in the Blue Jackets organization?
I would have to agree that it's probably Chinnikov for me. And I'm sorry to steal that from everybody else. But, that you talk about that shot, we've heard fables of how good his shot is. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure we also heard about what a great shot Bemstrom had. And that hasn't really panned out. Not yet, anyways. We don't know what it's going to look like in the coming season, and maybe reuniting with Boquist that'll help him out. But he's really a huge X factor, and we're going to really see if he makes Jarmo look like a genius or a bumbling fool.
What do you say, Dave?
I say Emil Bemstrom had a hat trick last year. How did that happen? But I'm gonna go Liam Foudy because if this team is a wide open team, and if this team is not quite as defensive minded as they have been in the past, you're going to see a guy like Liam Foudy fly up and down the ice. We've talked about Foudy's speed and Robinson's speed. If somehow those two guys can combine, maybe on the same line, and Foudy is able to showcase that now, I'm really optimistic about what we could see out of him. I think he's got some serious NHL skills. And since you mentioned the potential trade of a goaltender, I'm also going to throw Tarasov into the conversation.
Took my answer. Yep.
I mean, he's sitting there in Cleveland, and all we've heard is he could be better than Bob or Elvis or Corpy. That's all we've heard, right? Well, is this the year, or is it going to be next year? Who knows? So that's the way I'll go on that one.
Can't teach 6'5" in athletic, that's for sure.
Right.
Yep. Cody, we'll give you the final word on who are you most excited about?
I'm going to steal Nicholas's answer. It is Chinikov as well. For some reason, these players where they say their shot is amazing, I'm a sucker for them. I want to see it. I am a sucker for a really good shot.
Oh, good job, everybody. Dave, we really appreciate you joining the Union Junction podcast. And fans, make sure you're following Dave now, always. Got camp coming up in a couple weeks, Traverse City. We have the schedule out. They posted that on the website, but we're still waiting on rosters. But at DMets Media, he will keep you up to date on all things Columbus Blue Jackets. He gets a very unique perspective, and that's why he is an essential voice and a must-follow for all Blue Jackets fans. Metzi, you're the best, man. We really appreciate you.
Dude, thank you. I do have one other question, though, and this question is for Nicholas. Of those 8 albums behind you, which one is your favorite? Because they're all from my era, man. They're all from mine.
I would probably say the one that's hiding behind my head, ELO.
Oh, yeah, there you go, little ELO.
Out of the Blue. They're my top band of all time, so.
Okay, I'll give you that, but I might go Boston just because I listened to that Boston album.
That's a great album. It's a perfect album. There's no bad songs on it.
So I think we're going to have you guys back for an all music episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sounds good.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Fans, thank you for joining us on the Union Junction podcast. We will see you next week.